According to the Executive Director of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the COVID-19 recession has exposed more people to the risk of trafficking than ever before. What she has to say is that millions of women and children and men are out of work, out of school, and without the social support in the continuing COVID-19 crisis, leaving them at greater risk of human trafficking. We need targeted action to stop criminal traffickers from taking advantage of the pandemic to exploit the vulnerable. Today, I am putting in the spotlight to discuss this alarming trend. Tomitra Flucker. Tomitra currently works with Reclaim 13, a nonprofit that provides help and healing to victims of sex trafficking and educates local communities about trafficking. But her story is one of healing from being trafficked as a child. Tomitra, thank you so much for being here. It's so nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you.
We met you when you came to talk to our group of students and parents for our Next Level Leaders program about Reclaim 13 and about to educate them about sex trafficking and human trafficking. To start this off, can you share a little bit about your story of going from a victim of being trafficked as a child to being an advocate and being involved in helping other young women who have been trafficked?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. Not even just the invitation for today, but the invitation to come and speak to the youth. And I was just so blessed that there were parents that were there as well, that was interested in wanting to know more about it and to put a face, to what it is. And to know that it literally is not just across the countries, that it could literally be like right next door.
Yeah.
Which is something that is kind of how my story is.
Yeah.
Yes, I was trafficked at a young age. And the trafficking that took place, I wasn't, my story isn't like the other girls. And I've come to learn that it's not the only story that's like mine, because I have met other women whose story is similar to mine. But the girls that I work with, mine's is just a little bit different, because I was trafficked by my mother. My mother was very heavily addicted to drugs. At the time, she used quite a bit of substances. It wasn't just one, it was multiple substances. And as something that needed to help her maintain her habit and to provide for her habit, me and my sister was the two people that helped her be able to keep her habit. My mother also did prostitute herself as well. But I believe, and I've come to find out, trafficking her children was what brought her more money to be able to control, to be able to maintain her habit. My sister is older than me, and she was trafficked before I was. However, I did not find that out until after I came out and told that what was going on with me. And at the time, I honestly didn't know that it was trafficking. I called it being prostituted. I was using that word, that my mother was prostituting me. It would be, how it would happen was my mother would say that it's time to go for a walk. And the first time I took my first walk, I didn't know that was actually the walk that we were taking. And I remember him pulling up in a car. He drove very nice cars. And it was, a lot of the times it wasn't the same car. It was times he would pull up in a limousine. It was times that he would pull up in a sports car. It just, whatever he felt like, whatever he pulled up in is what he pulled up in. I do believe now, looking back at the time, I do believe he was a man that was wealthy. Mm-hmm. He always had on a suit and a tie, always. And like I said, the first walk was, he pulled up, we met at a corner, and he pulled up and we got in. And I remember asking my mom where we were going, and she just kind of put her hand on my hand and just like, we're just going for a ride now. We'll end up where we're going to end up. And we pulled up to a motel, and he parked sideways in front of the door for us to get out and to go in. And I will say this, I do remember him handing back a key. He handed back something to my mom, and my mom had took the key. And so when he pulled up to the door, he parked sideways for us to get out and to go in. And then he came in
Oh,
late.
remember that he pulled up sideways. Was it to block the door or was it?
It was to put us right towards the door. So when he pulled sideways,
So no one would really see.
Yeah, he pulled sideways and then we walked into the door and then he pulled off and parked, and he came in later on. Not too much later, but it was later on that he came into the room. So that was my first experience. That was my first walk. And after that, it was, I come to understand that it was more, the walks weren't just walks that I was going to take with my mom. But as a little girl with that first one, that's what I thought. My mother really wasn't at home a lot growing up. She was in and out due to her habit. So whenever she would come home, I always wanted to be around my mom.
Sure.
I always wanted to be up under her. I always wanted to do things for her. So when she had initiated that walk, it was like, yeah, let's, okay, let's go on a walk. And even afterwards, knowing what the walk was going to end up, where that journey was heading me to, the time with my mom during that time was that I felt as if I needed to do this in order for her to stay. This is what I needed to do in order for her to be around a little more. Because if she doesn't get it this way, if she doesn't get the money this way, she's going to find some other way to get it. And then she's going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and it became something that became routine to me. I remember the first times it was really difficult in the room to cooperate. Yeah. Took a long time to cooperate. And I remember, just saying, my mother saying, well, the faster you get it done, the faster we can leave. You can leave.
Oh my God.
And so I programmed that in my head after a while. If I get it done, I can get in and I can get out. And sometimes it wasn't always just one day. There were times that I remember staying for days. But that's how my story is a little bit different than some of the girls and some of what we imagine, or what we think are these, some of the things that they put in the movies where someone comes and they kidnap a girl and they take her across the country. That's how she's trafficked.
I have to admit, that's what I would have thought of when I thought of human trafficking before.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that it does happen, but my impression is more of, a gang member or a cartel or something, not a trusted family member.
Yeah.
I do know. So how did you realize what had happened to you and move into where you now help other girls to heal?
Yeah. That took a long time.
Yeah.
Because during the time that I was going through what I was going through, I didn't believe that God loved me. I didn't believe that he saw me. I didn't believe that he cared. And there was times that I didn't even believe that he was there, that he was real. Yeah. And I was raised in a church. I was literally, my grandmother took us to church. I think I was in church probably 4 or 5 days out the week, whether it was choir practice, my grandmother had usher board meetings, my grandfather had, trustee meetings, church services, Sunday school, Sunday vacation Bible school. I was always in church. But during this point in my life, it was, where is God?
Yeah. It almost makes it worse when you're going through that kind of abuse to have had a lot of formative, religion in your formative years, because I understand that there is a loving God, but it doesn't seem to be there for me. I'm in absolute hell.
Yeah, especially on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sunday, I got to go to church, Mm-hmm. So it was very, very difficult. The path that I was on after it stopped, because I was 13. And the reason it stopped is because my grandmother had moved us out to where I currently live now. Mm-hmm. And my mother ended up staying where it was that I was before, which was in Rock Island, Illinois. That's where I was born.
Yeah.
And so that's how it ended up stopping. Mm-hmm. What led me to where I am now, wow. I always knew that I wanted to be healed. I wanted to be made whole. it's crazy because even as a teenager, I knew something was wrong with me on the inside. And when I say something was wrong, I knew that the fact that I couldn't have healthy relationships, or even the type of relationships that I desired to have with my friends and with my sister, and even, you know, with my grandmother, with my mom, I knew that I can't, like, it's so hard for me to go to them and love on them and have them love on me. It was so hard for me to do that or to receive it. And I knew that that wasn't right, because I would see it in my other friends, and I would see how they would be with each other. And it was just like, man, I really, really I want to be like that. I want to have that type of freedom to express myself and to be open. But it was so many secrets that I was keeping. And I knew I had to keep these secrets. And I got to the point where it was like I was tired of feeling lonely, but I was in a room full of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feeling that only someone who's been there can understand, that to be lonely, but you're in a room full of people. You know, to say that you desire to have relationships and healthy relationships with women and people, but here it is right there, and they're right in front of your face, but it's so hard for you to be able to be vulnerable and transparent and open to receive it.
Right.
And I did a lot of fighting, you know, through my journey. I did a lot of that, especially in high school. I stayed in trouble in high school. My behavior, I acted out a lot. And it wasn't that what was going on, my trafficking was still taking place during that time. It was everything that came after the trafficking, all the emotional feelings that I was having. And then my mother ended up moving out here with us. So I was triggered again, you know, and it was just so much going on the inside of me that I just was acting out. And that was pretty rough for me, but it was quite a few people that did not give up on me during that journey. But how I ended up at Reclaim 13 is I had entered into a different season in my life. And I had literally got let go from my job that I had been at for 10 years. And I had joined New Faith Baptist Church International, which is in Matson, Illinois. And I had joined church, and I was a part of the dance ministry. And that just wasn't enough for me. You know, I'm used to serving in the church. Like I said, even as a little girl, I was always in the church. As a young adult, I was always in the church, serving with the youth, whatever it was, that's what I did. I had prayer partners, accountability partners, all of those things. And so being at New Faith, and it's really a big church, I wanted to find my way besides dancing, besides ministering through movement. So I made an appointment with the first lady of my church, which is Dr. Alexis Felder. And I went in on that day. I would never forget it. I went in on that day, and we sat down and we were talking. And I told her, I said, you know, I really want to find some women that I can get up under, you know, that can help, you know, guide me on this journey, help me push me into my purpose, someone that I can pray with, you know, because me and my mother never had that relationship, and my grandmother was passed away. And I've always known since being at the church that I was before, how impactful and powerful, and how it's needed to have someone that you can glean from, and just be up under, to be able to guide you. I'm a woman. I've been a woman my whole life, but being a mother and you know, wanting to be a good mother, and wanting to be a better sister, and wanting to be a better aunt, you know, and wanting to have wisdom and be able to walk with integrity and character and in love. You know, God puts people in your life for you to be able to look at. It's just like as a little girl, you look up, oh, I want to be like this person. With me, I wanted to be like godly women. Yeah. I wanted to be like that. So I seeked it from my first lady. And after about 10 minutes of being with her, she gave me a list of names and, you know, who I can contact and all of that. Well, we had about 40 more minutes in the meeting. And she was like, well, you know, let's talk, you know, let's get to know each other. So, you know, she began to ask me questions about my family and where I was from. And she noticed that the first thing she noticed was I didn't talk about my dad. And that's because I really never knew my father.
Sure.
And so I told her that. And then she said, well, you've been praising your grandmother so much and acknowledging your grandmother. What about your mom? And I was like, my mom, she's good, and she was like, so she's alive. And I was like, yeah, she's alive. We're good,
Mm-hmm.
And then she just kind of gave me this look like, there's something going on there. And normally I would have made up something and just kept on going, but it was something in me that literally opened up my mouth, and I shared my story with my first lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she sat back in the chair, and of course I'm emotional and I'm crying, and she looked at me and she smiled, and she reminded me of who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I learned the word trafficking, because she said, sweetie, you wasn't prostituted. You wasn't no prostitute, because that's how she talked. Baby, you wasn't no prostitute. You were trafficked. And I wiped my eyes and I just kind of looked at her, and I was like, I'm gonna have to look that word up later, because I ain't never heard that word before referred to this. So then she asked me where I was in my healing. And I told her where I was, that I knew that I was on the path where God was mending certain things, and me and my mother's relationship was better, much better than what it was before. It wasn't where I wanted to be, but it was definitely progressing to where, I seen it happening. Yeah. And she asked me then, she said, well, have you ever heard of an organization called Reclaim 13? And I'm like, no. And she was like, well, she told me a little bit about them. Mm-hmm. And as she was telling me about Reclaim 13, it was something in my belly that leaped, like it literally, it was like a leap in my belly. And I just started crying, but I was smiling at the same time. And she was like, what I want you to do is, she said, she had shared with me about something, how they were connected with Reclaim 13 and different things that had, taken place between New Faith and Reclaim 13. And she was like, but I want you, she said, I honestly think, she said, I believe that this is where God wants you to be. And she said, but I want you to go home and I want you to look them up and I want you to do some research. She said, and if it's something, I want you to pray. That's what she said. I want you to pray about it. And she said, and if after you've prayed, and you want to do it, you send me your resume. She said, and I'll send your resume directly to Cassandra. So I came home and I got on, my laptop, and I'm looking them up, and I'm not even gonna lie, I didn't even pray. I just started. I was speaking to the Lord at the same time that I was doing my research.
When you heard about, like, it was suddenly like, it's not just me. This is something that's happened to a lot of people, and suddenly you're not so alone. And it's just like, I'm not like this complete freak. There are other people who have gone through this, and there are people, there's healing for it.
And so much of what you just said, that came like a little later. Mm-hmm. But once I got to the house and I did my resume and everything, I sent it to her. And what's crazy is I had to do a resume because I had been in my job for 10 years. So I didn't have one, so I had to make a resume and, do all of that. And then I sent it to her on a Monday. Yeah. And I heard from Cassandra on the Wednesday. I received an email from Cassandra on a Wednesday.
And that's the executive director.
Cassandra Ma is the executive director, yes, and the founder of Reclaim 13. And that Friday I had my interview. And I remember meeting with her and Mary Warren. Mm-hmm. And I remember right before that though, and I was telling my first lady, because I spoke with her before, and I said, I'm so nervous. And I was like, what is it? I don't have my degree. I'm just now in school for psychology. And, I'm not qualified. I kept saying, I'm not qualified for this, And I remember First Lady, reaffirming me and speaking life into me and dismissing all those, the things the enemy was trying to feed me. And she told me this. She said, if she asks you about a degree, or she asks you about working, the position, just say, I have yet to obtain my degree. Just say that. Those is what she told me to say. I have yet to. Right, that's it. And then after that, the Lord will tell you where to go with that. Awesome. And so I remember Cassandra asking me what position, because there were two positions. It was the mentor position and it was the house counselor position. And she asked me, and me, thinking that, you have to have this degree to be the house counselor, and I'm like, I said, well, I have yet to obtain my degree for the house counselor position. I said, so I will, I would love to be a mentor. And Cassandra looked at me and she said, "Sweetie, I didn't ask you if you had a degree." She said, "I asked you what position you wanted." And I said, "I want the position as the house counselor." And she said, "Well, there we go." And we went from there. And it was just such an amazing, amazing feeling to know that in that moment, God was letting me know that he had called me for this. Like, even though I was so nervous about the interview, because I cried in my interview. Like, I cried like during the interview. And I was sitting in the car like, I'm not going to get this job because I was so emotional. But at the same time, it was that the fact that God allowed me to know that just because of my step, because I took this first step to where it is that he is calling me to be, that it was nothing else that I had to worry about after that he was going to take care of me. And she texted me while I was still sitting in the car. And her text was, "I look forward to serving alongside of you." And after, my background check and everything went through, I was working that following week. And I remember walking in the door. My first day was a Saturday. And I got lost on my way there because I didn't picture it to look like what it was. But when I walked through the door, I remember the very first resident that I saw, she was sitting at the end of the table. And the way she looked at me and her eyes lit up and she jumped out the chair to come give me a hug. And she was like, "I've heard about you and I'm so excited." And she wanted to give me a tour, and everything. It was in that moment that I knew that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And it's just like you said, it's I started to dream about girls after that. I started to dream about the residents that was coming to the house. I started to dream about other survivors that was out there, because I don't call them victims, I call them survivors. And it was affirmed in me that I was where it was that I was supposed to be. I had been running for so long because I was so ashamed of what it was, the secret that I had. And then to be able to find out that this is not just my secret. There's other girls out there that is still carrying this secret. And there's other ones that's using their voice and decided that this was not going to continue in their lives. And so to see them, yes, they are my girls and I call them my babies. But we are all sister survivors is what I call us. So looking at them is like looking at myself in the mirror. And I remember when it was times I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror.
Well, something that I just want to note before I go on to the next piece of this is how you don't shy away from the fact that faith and your spirituality was so key in your healing, and that you opened yourself up to that. And I mean, I think we get so stuck in our heads a lot of the time. And I mean, certainly people can be cured of all sorts of things through cognitive behavioral therapy and things like that. But I mean, it's just when you open yourself up to what God has planned for you and don't, all of a sudden miracles happen. And it's really like you were put on this path. But I noted at the top that trafficking has risen now. I know you're aware of this because of your work at Reclaim 13, because of the COVID recession and because of, people are at economic disadvantage. Kids have not had access to school, where a lot of things are caught by teachers because they were shut out. And I think it's all of our responsibility to prevent human trafficking. I know a lot of parents probably are going to watch this and want to know, what do I do to make sure this isn't happening to the kids in my life, whether they're my kids or my nieces or the girls down the street. So what are some of the things that parents and first responders, like teachers, should be looking for? What's the grooming process like, if there is one?
Okay. Yeah, there definitely is a grooming process. And when you bring up, and if you see me look to the side, it's because I took a couple of notes and wrote some things down. But I can say the reason we believe why the trafficking numbers have gone up, especially during COVID, is because kids are at home and they have more access to social media. So they're on the internet a lot. Okay. And that's how it's being groomed. They're finding comforting conversations that they're having with people, and I wouldn't just say males, I would say females, because my experience has been with a female. But that's basically really where it is. They're on the internet, they're conversating through, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Snap, or whatever, all of these different social sites is where it's happening. And that's the reason why the numbers are going up. And then what's going on is too, a lot of the youth, some of the youth are already in situations at home that they don't want to be in. It's a lot of things going on in the house, whether the parents are super, super strict, or the parents are aggressive or abusive, or there's substance abuse going on in the home. So they're trying
to know that the substance abuse rates and abuse rates, domestic violence rates, all went up during COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. So kids they're in there and they're dealing with it, and they're trying to find a way out, and what's happening through these conversations that we believe through these conversations is, they're being told all the right things that they want to hear. That's where the grooming takes place. So they're running out to be with this person that's telling them, oh, if you're here with me, you don't have to worry about that, or I'll take care of you. You don't have to go without this, or, oh, that your father or your mother, if they didn't, they don't love you if they talk to you that way, or they're putting their hands on you. It's all of that manipulation that takes place within the youth in their mind, because they're young and they're seeking something outside of where they are.
So watch the social media is number one. Big
absolutely. Absolutely. I have 4 children. My oldest 3 are adults. 25, 24, and 22, but I have a 14-year-old. And she's had a cell phone for probably about a good 3 years now. Her brother actually got it because I wasn't getting it for her. But she's not on Facebook, but she is on some of those other social sites. And as I have parental, control over her phone. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen even with that, but I'm in her phone. Her password is my password.
Right.
I can put my fingerprint in her phone, and her phone opens up. So it's you keep your phone away from me. I go through your phone. If I pay your bill, I got the right to go through that, because you're 14. I mean, and even if I didn't pay the bill, you're 14 years old. Right. And I'm going to make sure that I do my best, the best possible way that I know how. And I think too, with my older children, I'm kind of over the top because of my experience.
Sure.
And sometimes that's what it's sad sometimes that things happen, and that's when parents or people or aunties or whatever become aware when something takes place, so it makes you a little bit overly alert about certain things. And that is me. I do struggle with that. I struggled a lot with that with my oldest daughter. But with my 14-year-old, I go through her phone.
Sure. Are there any other behaviors that they would start displaying, or that we should watch for?
Yeah, well, so absolutely, there are. One thing that I can say is behaviors. Absolutely. When I was in school, that was one of the things. I acted out, and I know I shared that a little while ago. I was very, very. I fought a lot. And it was really because I felt like I had no fight at home. Like I had no control over what was going on with me. So when I left out, I was going to control everything that took place around me. So as far as me acting out in school, that definitely was a sign. It was looked over. And I'm not going to say looked over. I hate to use that, because I don't know the minds of the people that was in authority during that time. But I can't recall things that were said to me when I was a teenager and I was getting in trouble. Was they thought that it was gang related. They thought that, I was acting out because of the community that I was in, or the people that I hung around. Right. They associated my behavior with that, which, I hung around those people, but that's not the stem. That wasn't the root of it. You know what I mean? Later on down the road, I started to act like my friends and do certain things, and I joined a gang. But the root, what caused it, was what was taking place in my life. So definitely acting out. Physical signs are like pain in the genital, or or having certain discharges, pain trying to use the restroom. Physical, you could possible bruises that you could see on them if they're in one of those trafficking situations where the trafficker is putting their hands on them. Emotional signs are different mood swings, changes in your disposition, being withdrawn, suicidal ideation, anxiety, crying, and increased sadness. Behaviors is bad dreams, acting out, changing and eating, being ashamed of their body at times, or not wanting to undressed in front of you, and then also having money or materials that are unknown to yourself, and you're wondering like, how is it that they got all of this or have this much money, or they're buying these different things, especially when they don't have a job. And you're not giving them that money to be able to buy those things. So those are things that you can question if you were to see it.
And then more broadly, there are cultural influences and there are policies that legislative policies that contribute to trafficking and can help reduce trafficking. Some of those are, and I'd like to talk to you about each of them, but is one bill up in Illinois that I want to talk to you about first. But some of those are legalized prostitution. The insecurity at the border certainly contributes to it, pornography. And right now there is this bill that's been proposed in the Illinois General Assembly by Rep. Anna Moeller is running the House bill. It's House Bill 1797. There's a Senate Bill 2190. They're the same intent. They repeal parental notification about abortion. So this is not just you have to give permission. It's not permission. It's you don't even have a right to know that your minor daughter is seeking an abortion. So if Anna Moeller's bill is successful, parents will have no right to be notified if their child has an abortion. So among the testimony that was given in opposition to this bill was a Dr. Brooke Bello, who was trafficked as a minor. Dan Proft, who's a local radio show host, played the testimony that she gave to Illinois legislators on AM 560. I'm going to play that clip now.
Why wouldn't someone, unless it's an emancipated youth, why wouldn't someone give the opportunity for that youth's parents to be notified? How can a parent absolutely raise and guide their child? Why would someone want to keep such a profound thing that affects the womb health, the life, throughout that child's life, keep such a profound secret? I mean, I was raped at 11 years old. I started being trafficked as a young teen. Our traffickers made us get abortions. Had my parents been notified, had my parent been notified, my mother would have known what city I was in. She would have known what street I possibly would have been near. She could have contacted law enforcement. And then the mitigation of the issues I suffered my entire life being happily married, not just the issues with endometriosis and other aspects of wound health. But because I was so young, my doctor, even as an actor with really good insurance at a young age, didn't understand that I had issues related to previous abortion. It wasn't until later in life that my gynecologist said, "Oh my God, what happened to you when you were young? Had you had any abortions?" And when I expressed I had abortions, it was one doctor that said, "This is why you've been trying to have children for years and have had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage and other issues with my health related to that." And so we have to notify parents, not just because of trafficking, but a young girl could have been date raped, trafficked, the grooming process, all the different fears that a trafficker puts inside of her head to say, now you can't go home because you're pregnant.
I think that it's ridiculous, to say the least, in not allowing a parent to know something so deep. That's the word that
common sense. Like a young girl shows up seeking an abortion. How did you get? A crime has happened. If you're underage, it's very likely a crime at minimum has happened, and those parents have a right to know. It's not. You get called, a prude all the time for taking this position, or that you're anti-woman, anti-girl. But like, why would you protect someone? I mean, who are you protecting in this? It's not this girl.
You're absolutely not protecting her. You're not protecting her feelings. You're not even protecting her emotional state at that particular time. Because as a minor, as a child, they don't even grasp the concept of so many things that we know as an adult. And as an adult standing in front of a child who's in this position, to even have to get yourself together to go to a clinic to have an abortion. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can just imagine what's going on. And she's already alone. Right. Her parent is not there. It's so much that can be done it's so much that can take place within that bond at that moment for a mother and a daughter, or a father and a daughter during that particular time, with her going there to seek something, and I'm not going to say horrific because people have freedom to choose. It's something, so that's a decision that I don't believe people enter into lightly. So as a young girl, not being able, or a parent not knowing what's taking place with their child. Let me change that, because I'm a mother. There's no way that I could ever understand. That's why I said it's ridiculous to not feel as a parent that that's something that you need to know that's taking place with your child. Anything can even happen.
Well, and Tomitra, it's notable that you were the child of, may I say, an abusive parent. And that's what's always thrown up in these parental notification, parental permission situations is, what if there's an abusive parent who doesn't care? What do you say to that? If there's
what do I say to that? Then some authorities need to go into that home to find out what's going on and why that parent doesn't care. With me and my situation, like I said, it was assumed that it was the community that I lived in is the reason why I was acting out. It never was really anyone to sit down and ask me questions about what was going on. It was just automatically assumed. And to sit down, as a child, to know that, okay, this is what I'm doing and nobody see. This is like, I'm screaming out, hello, I'm here, somebody, and people.
And no one's saying, here's what's happening in this house. Because, and I think like, it's not politically correct to say we need to look at what's going on in this home.
It's so many girls, there's so many boys, because it's not just happening to girls. There's so many youth whose voice is silent, but on the inside they're screaming. Yeah. And they're just looking and they're waiting for somebody to see them. They're waiting for somebody, they're waiting for someone to even ask the question. They're waiting for someone to just take the time to turn around and to see them and to hear their silent cries. That's why I say, not just as a survivor, I just couldn't fathom the thought of, even if especially if it's something that happened to my child and I didn't know about, you're not even giving me the opportunity to be there for my child. You're not allowing me to put that love back in and let them know that I'm there and I'm okay, because you're you're taking that opportunity away from me, not even giving me the opportunity to know. I think I
wouldn't say that Anna Mueller is wanting to protect sex traffickers. I just think she doesn't know what she's doing.
Yes.
I think she thinks she's playing to an agenda, and it's really harmful for very vulnerable young girls.
Yeah. And it's exactly, I do exactly agree with you as far as just not traffickers, because I don't know if that's if she's looking at it that way just for that particular thing.
I don't think she's thinking about it at all. I think she's trying to.
It's in general. It's in a
parenthood.
It's overall. It's just overall. I don't know where those things come from.
Just your thoughts on how, from your experience and from what you've worked with the girls, people talk about legalizing prostitution. Like it's the argument is, well, everybody's in agreement on this. It's a business. What are your feelings? I think that it makes it easier for traffickers to get away with it, because if you can't prosecute for prostitution, then that's one step that you're not taking in and finding out what's going on in this situation. Right. You're not stopping the situation. It's a point that you're eliminating.
Yes, and I definitely agree with you on that one. It is. It's really kind of victimizing the person that's in the situation, and not holding them responsible, and they're allowed to get away with what it is that's going on.
What about the dissemination of pornography and how broad that is? How, this is one where you really get called a prude if you say this is a problem.
Yeah.
What's your feeling on that? Did that contribute, do you think? Does that contribute to sex trafficking?
It does contribute to sex trafficking. It is, you definitely can go toe to toe with some people in regards to this topic, because it's basically, they're saying it's a choice that people make, whether they watch it or not, and what type of thoughts they get out of it, which leads them to do different things. And a lot of people just have these preconceived assumptions just about overall predators and how men or how women become predators, and pornography definitely doesn't have anything to do with that. And I don't know the statistics on all of that. I don't. But my personal opinion, absolutely, I do know. It's something that I've known, but also just in the organization that I serve in, it is a contributor to that.
Sure. Well, we know that it desensitizes, especially men. It does impact your brain, and it causes chemicals that are similar to addiction. It desensitizes their natural role in a relationship, which is that instinct to protect women, and instead they're seeing them increasingly as objects.
Yeah.
So there are studies that show that this is, and certainly that would lead to being, participating in some sort of sex trafficking.
Yeah.
This has been this is a very difficult topic, and I thank you. Is there anything that before we wrap this up, you would like people to know about trafficking, or about you, or about Reclaim 13?
Oh, yeah. I hope that I was able to answer your questions the way that you need. And
you are wonderful.
Reclaim 13 is an awesome organization that I serve for, and I'm grateful. I'm truly, truly grateful for Cassandra and the vision that she has and the heart that she has. I wish, absolutely, absolutely wish, and I tell my girls all the time, I absolutely wish that there was a place like that for me. And I honestly wish that even during my process of healing, that I was able to be among women like the women that I serve with. Cherish House, which is the safe house that I work in, where the girls live. And then we do have a second house called Courage House. So Cherish House is for our youth, and then Courage House is our 18+ program.
Okay.
And I serve at Cherish House. And the relationships that have been developed with myself, with the women that I serve with, has become so impactful in my life. And the fact that what I'm learning, how I'm healing in my walk, is revealed and shown to the girls every single day. And as a survivor, me personally, like I said, my story's not the same. So some of the girls it was a competitive, that's a competitive area, especially when you're trafficked with other girls that are with you. So from my conversations with the girls, that's why it's hard for them to have healthy relationships with other girls.
Right.
And then with me, with mine stemming from my mom, it's hard for me to have relationships with women and girls. But being in an organization where you see these healthy relationships with women, it allows things to break from you. Strongholds are becoming unbroken. They're not strong anymore to hold on to these girls. So you're able, once they're being broken and the girls' hearts are being open, you're able to start pouring in those things that need to be poured into them, so that it can affirm and start to validate who they are and restore the things that were taken from them. So being at Cherish House, working for Reclaim 13, is definitely a step to true freedom for any survivor of trafficking.
Well, I want to thank you again for joining me today, and for your courage in speaking out about this. And I know a lot of victims struggle with the shame of what happens to them, and that makes it hard for them to speak out. So that makes you sharing your story that much more important. And if you would like, for anyone in our audience, if you would like more information about Reclaim 13, or how to prevent sex trafficking in your community, you can get involved at reclaim13,
Yes.
the number 13.org.
Yes.
Thank you again.